Today we're presenting a program about the female American artist who went to Paris and studied with the leading impressionists and painted with them of her day. Today we welcome Mary Cassatt. I was going to tell you a little bit more about her history, but I think we'll let Mary tell her own story. Let's welcome Mary Cassatt.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Or bonjour. I bring you greetings from my home in Paris, France. In this year of 1918, I am delighted to be back here to America, the place of my birth. But although I'm an American by birth, I've made my home across the Atlantic Ocean, where the journey by ship still makes me dreadfully seasick. My name, Mary Cassatt, which I cite on all of my paintings, has made me famous in France, where I have received the award of a red ribbon for the French Legion of Honor for my contribution in art. I am proud of this award, and I am proud of my accomplishments where I am famous in France for my work as an artist. But as an American, I have dreams of one day being famous for my paintings here in American museums. How many of you here like to draw? How many of you here like to paint? I'm here today to share with you what I love to do more than anything else in the world, and that is being an artist. Not the kind of artist who dabbles a little bit here and a little bit there in art. No, I wanted to make it my career. Although it is something I wanted to do more than anything else in the world, not everyone around me was in favor of my following my dreams, especially my father. He thought it was fine for me to draw and paint for a hobby, but heaven forbid that I, a woman, would even dare to dream that I could earn money as an artist. I remember what he said to me when I announced my plans to him. I would almost rather see you dead. I know I was going against the norm of what was expected of women at that time. I was expected to marry and raise a family of my own, which is all well and good. I saw nothing wrong with that, of course. But I couldn't quite understand what was wrong with my wanting to pursue my dream of becoming an artist one day. I never lost sight of that dream. And I could tell you that I eventually won my father over to my side of thinking. So I could tell you that dreams can come true. But sometimes they take a little bit longer than we expected. And sometimes they take us in new directions that we never could have dreamed possible. If I may, I would like to take you back in time to when the seed of the idea to become an artist was first planted in my mind. I was born in Allegheny City, Pennsylvania, now Pittsburgh, on May 22nd, 1844. I had 3 older brothers and an older sister, Lydia, whom I adored. There were 2 things that I remember most about my growing up. One, I loved to ride horses. And it was only recently in my life that I gave it up, for you see, I took a bad fall, broke my right leg, and dislocated my left shoulder. My love of horses is second to my love of art. The other thing I remember doing growing up is we took a family vacation when I was 7 years old. Imagine we sailed across the Atlantic Ocean to Paris, France. My father, who was an investment banker and also the mayor of town, had the means to take us on such a vacation. And I am thankful for that trip, for it is then that the seeds of the idea to become an artist was first planted in my mind. Ah, Paris. How many of you have been to Paris? Then you know the grand cathedrals, the history, the museums with marble and bronze statues and paintings painted by famous artists. And oh, there are the people who are dressed in different clothes, doing in different settings. There are the ponds with beautiful fish, and there are also the gardens that have beautiful flowers. And there are some people who are out on the pond who are taking a leisurely ride in a rowboat. Who knew that one day I returned to Paris and made Paris my home? Who knew that our family vacation would turn into an extended 4-year vacation where we actually stayed in France and in Germany? Sadly, it was in Germany when my 13-year-old brother, Robbie, died. It was still something that still haunts me to this day, hurts me to this day, that I miss him so much. But it was while we were in France that I could tell you that the seeds of that idea were there, to be surrounded by such rich culture and all of that influence, and that I could learn to speak the language that helped me to decide that I wanted to be an artist. When I was 16 years old, I told my father that I wanted to take art classes at the Art Academy in Pennsylvania. For this part of my dream, my father was in favor of, thinking that this would be my hobby. He even accompanied me to school sometimes. I took classes with my good friend Eliza Haldeman, and then we learned how to draw by copying paintings that were available to us. I did this for 4 years, copying the paintings that they had for us. But I decided that if I wanted to grow and to be the artist that I dreamed of becoming, that I needed to return to Europe, especially to Paris, where the best of the master artist paintings were. Despite my father's disapproval of my leaving, I convinced him that I would be in good hands, for my mother was going to go along with me as chaperone, and I would be with my good friend Eliza Haldeman. Eliza and I began taking classes in small French villages, and of course we went to the Louvre. How many of you have been to the Louvre? Then you know the master artist paintings there. And I copied them day after day, and I had an instructor that said, surround yourself with all kinds of art and to look at them constantly with all of your might. And I became very good at copying the master artist paintings. But I never lost sight of that dream that I wanted to have my own type of paintings, my own style. And I had 2 paintings that I had done, and I decided to submit them to the art exhibit called at the Salon. It was the world's largest art exhibition. For you see, so many people came to the Salon, and they were there to purchase some of the artist's paintings. And I submitted my paintings only to have them rejected, because I had not followed the rules carefully that they had set down for the artist to follow. And I share with you some of the rules that I wrote down so I would remember them. Salon rules. Make really big pictures. The bigger, the better. I didn't do that. Paint important stuff, like famous battle scenes or heroes from legends. I didn't do that either. Don't let any of your brush strokes show. Use only dark colors. I found that when I followed some of these carefully and made sure that my brush strokes were so smooth and that I would only use dark colors, one of my paintings was accepted into the Salon called The Mandolin Player. Now I thought that someone would buy this painting and I could prove to my father how serious I was to become a professional artist, and I could earn money as an artist. Well, the sad thing happened was in 1870, the Franco-Prussian War broke out, and I returned back to America. I had 2 of my paintings with me, and I took them to a New York gallery, but no one, I mean no one, wanted to buy my paintings. I was so discouraged that nobody liked my work. Then the following October, I learned that a jewelry store in Chicago would show my paintings. So I took a train to Chicago, and I was so happy when I saw that there were people who were interested in my paintings, and I thought for sure I would have my first sale. But then something happened to those paintings in that jewelry store. They burned in the Chicago fire. Maybe some of you have heard of the Chicago fire. It was started by a cow, Mrs. O'Leary's cow. I'm not sure if that's true, but I do know that the city was awfully dry that October of 1871, and all it would take was just one little spark to spark that fire. But you can imagine how disappointed I was to lose my paintings, plus the sale to prove to my father that I could be a professional artist. And of course, I felt so bad for the city of Chicago, but Chicago did rebuild itself even bigger and better. Don't you agree? Yes. Like something good came out of the tragedy of Chicago fire. Not long after that, I received an opportunity from the Archbishop of a church in Pittsburgh. They were building a new cathedral, and the Archbishop commissioned me to paint a copy from the Italian artist named Correggio, who I believe to be the greatest artist to ever live. I would be paid $300. I knew that this would take a lot of effort to do this. I decided I needed to go to Italy. I needed to look at the original painting so that I could copy the painting the best that I could. I went on my father's dollar, although my father would put down his foot and say that he was never going to buy me my paint. But he did pay for me to go to Italy. And I copied this painting, and people in the town saw what I had produced, and they wanted to know who was the artist of this wonderful painting. I was so proud of this painting. I sent it back to Pittsburgh to have it hung in the cathedral, and the Archbishop was so happy with what I had done. But I'm sad to say that that painting no longer exists, so there was a fire that burned that cathedral, and I lost my painting. But I learned after painting the coronation of the Virgin Mary that I could successfully copy the master artist paintings. And I have to tell you, for those who love to draw and to paint, I believe that it's important for an artist to learn how to draw a human figure. The gesture of one's hands, a person's movements and actions that you see in the work of the master artist. It took me years to develop this technique and also to develop a style which I could call my own. While I was in Italy, I went to visit the museums there and copied some of the paintings there, and I painted my own painting of what I saw life around me in Italy. I painted a painting of women throwing flowers off of a balcony, and I sent it to a Philadelphia gallery and exhibition, and guess what? No, it didn't burn in a fire. But thankfully, someone liked it enough that they bought it. Now I had made my second sale to prove to my father that indeed I could become a successful artist. I decided now that I needed to go to Spain to look at the beautiful paintings there. And while I was there, I was inspired, and I painted 4 new paintings of my own, of what I saw people doing in everyday life around me. I painted a painting of a matador wearing a silver-studded bolero after a bullfight. Painted women on a balcony also. I sent that to New York, and I received good reviews for my paintings. I was proud of the hard work that I had put into doing this. And I'm proud to say 2 more of my paintings were accepted into the salon. So it proved that hard work did pay off. I decided at this time of my life that I was going to set down my roots permanently in Paris, where I believe was a center of the art world, and that I could also have my best chance of making money to prove to my father that I could indeed be a professional artist. And it was while I was there that my sister Lydia decided to leave Philadelphia and come stay with me in Paris. Oh, it was wonderful to have my sister with me. And we saw that in 1876, a French artist named Frederic Auguste Bartholdi was building a statue called Liberty Enlightening the World. It was to be a gift from the people of France to the people of America, commemorating the 100-year anniversary of them coming to our aid during our Revolutionary War. And I saw the artist's dream come to life as Miss Liberty continued to grow taller and taller. When she was all finished, she stood 151 feet from the base of her feet to the top of her torch. People would climb up that torch and look and see a beautiful view of the city. My own nephew had come to see such a view. It was such a sad day for the people in France when Miss Liberty had to be disassembled, to be put into her 214 wooden crates, to be shipped over to America, to be put in her permanent place on Bedloe's Island in New York. How many of you have had the good fortune to see Miss Liberty standing there? It's a very proud moment to see such a beautiful statue. But I now had made Paris my permanent home. And oh, for all of you who have been to Paris, is it not a shopping paradise? Oh, I love to see all the latest fashion, and I love to buy hats. Do you like my new hat? I love to paint women wearing them, and I love to wear them as well. It was while I was out shopping one day that I saw a store window, and I saw a painting in that store window that was painted by a French artist named Edgar Degas. I had never seen any type of work like his, nothing in the salon. Oh, his brushstrokes were so much bolder. His painting was so much brighter. I thought, I must meet this artist who is stepping out of the rules at the salon. This was a turning point in my life as an artist. It turns out that he had seen one of my paintings at the salon called Ida. And he would tell me later that he told his friend that I had infinite talent. And he said that I felt the same way of passion for art that he did. Why, we were able to meet together, and I found that he was not alone in this new type of artwork that was called Impressionism, and that there was a handful of other artists that were stepping out of the way the salon had their rules and breaking their rules. I met some of the Impressionists: Edward Manet, Claude Monet, Camille Pissarro, Auguste Renoir, and Alfred Sisley. And I met Bertha Morisot, the other woman. I was the only American in this group. And I share with you a little bit of my first impressions that I saw of them. I learned that Monet and Pissarro and Sisley, they liked to paint the French countryside. Whereas Renoir, he liked to paint the people that he sees in the parks and on the boulevards. I learned that Monet and Renoir were very good friends. In the early days of their painting career, they had to give up painting because they could not afford to buy the paint if they wanted to buy their food. And I learned a story that was told by Edward Manet, who told his good friend Claude Monet about Claude Monet's good friend Auguste Renoir. Did you get all that? Well, Manet believed that Renoir had no talent. He told Monet, he said, that boy, he has no talent at all. You, who are his friend, please tell him to give up painting. I don't believe Monet told his friend Renoir to give up painting. But like Renoir, I love to paint what I see people doing all around me in everyday scenes. I share with you a letter that Claude Monet wrote about all the beauty there is around us. There is so much beauty to behold, don't you agree? So much to bring to life in a painting. And this is what Claude Monet said. Every day I discover more and more beautiful things. It's enough to drive one mad. I have such a desire to do everything. My head is bursting with it. I intend to struggle, scrape it off, begin again, because one can produce what one sees and what one understands. It is on the strength of observation and reflection that one finds it. Monet loved the French countryside to paint, and he especially loved his property at Giverny. He loved planting beautiful flowers there, and he had a pond that he introduced water lilies to, and he would paint these water lilies in many of his paintings. How many of you are familiar with Monet's water lily paintings? Well, I must admit to you, I am not crazy about them because they remind me of glorified wallpaper. But what do I know? Claude Monet sells the most paintings out of any of us, so I think people love his paintings. And oh, how he loved his property at Giverny. Oh, he built a blue Japanese bridge over his pond so he could reflect and look at the beauty of all the surroundings. It was a sad day when his second wife Alice died, and then sadly his son John. I have to say the only solace that Claude Monet found in his life at that time was at his beautiful property of Giverny. I must share with you a little bit about Edward Manet. He and I both shared that sense of struggle of what you're going through as an artist. He and I spent hour upon hour at the Louvre copying the master artist's paintings. And we believed that the museums were all the teachers that one needs. And because we were spending all this time and hoping to get our work into the salon, where people buy your paintings, where you make your money as an artist, only to have your work rejected. And he was so hard on himself, Edward Manet, he was known to cut up some of his paintings into smaller paintings and tried to get them submitted into the salon. And he did get some of his work submitted into the salon, just like I did, only again and again to have them rejected. So he complained to the Secretary of State, Napoleon III, about this situation. And Napoleon III, he reviewed the situation, decided that all the rejected paintings could have their own exhibition. It would be called the Salon des Refuses. So Edward Manet brought 3 of his paintings to that exhibition. 4,000 people came to that exhibition to see these works. Well, maybe you're familiar with one of Manet's very famous paintings called Luncheon on the Grass. Well, it was such a scandal. The reviewers said, there they are, the principal people, the principal lady entirely undressed. Well, you can imagine he also used the bold brushstrokes and he also used different paints, so they shut it down altogether. But something began to happen when artists such as Manet, Monet, Renoir, Degas, and others began to break the rules at the salon and began to break out into an own style they could call their own. At one of the first exhibitions, one of the reviewers saw Monet's work and said, its primary goal is to create an impression. Thus the name, The Impressionists. I loved being with my new artist friends, and it was after another one of my paintings was rejected at the salon that I decided to accept their invitation to show my work at one of their exhibitions. And now I began to do so many things with my sister and began to paint the scenes that we were now going to. Why, we got all dressed up. We went to the theater and to the opera. We sat in the seats with our opera glasses peering out over at the stage. My good friend, Edgar Degas, he began also painting paintings of dancers at the rehearsal halls and also on the stage. This is one of the ones that he painted. For 40 years, he painted beautiful paintings like this of the ballet dancers. Renoir also painted some of his paintings at the ballet rehearsal halls. And I now was going to be exhibiting my new paintings in the 4th exhibition. So I began to paint paintings of my sister. And you could see how my paintings now looked much more like the Impressionist painters. So in the beginning, when the Impressionist painters were exhibiting their work, people came and laughed at these paintings because they were so different than what the master artist's work was like. And I got mixed reviews for my paintings. Somebody said they liked my shocking use of yellows, greens, and reds. Someone else said they did not like how my face looked like a fish and took on an orange color. Someone else said they liked my use of bold colors. I did too. It was so different than what I was doing. I loved my new palette. I loved to experiment with new forms and new colors. Oh, but there were others that just said that we should not step away from how the master artists were doing their work. I began to paint many more paintings of my sister. Why, I painted her when we went to the theater, all dressed up. I painted her in the garden, reading a newspaper. I painted her sipping a cup of tea, wearing a beautiful hat, of course. I painted her driving a horse-drawn carriage with Edgar Degas' niece sitting beside her. I painted her in a friendly conversation, sipping a cup of tea with her friend. And I painted her near the end of her life in the garden, crocheting. In the year 1877, I was glad that my parents came to be with us in France. And for you see, my sister Lydia became very, very ill with something called Bright's disease. And then sadly, one day, my beloved sister died. Words cannot express the deepest sadness that I felt in losing my sister. I had not only lost my sister, I had lost my best friend. And for the next 6 months, I could not pick up a paintbrush to paint. Gone were those fun-filled days that my sister and I had spent at the theater and the opera. And when I finally picked up my paintbrush again, I found that my paintings had changed. I can tell you that I began pouring myself to fill the void of losing my sister into my painting. I began at 8 o'clock in the morning and I would paint through till it was almost dark. Sometimes I would have friends over for tea and friendly conversation. But I can see now how because of my sister's passing, my paintings took on a quieter scene. I began to paint pictures of mothers with their children, bathing them, taking them to outings like to the beach. I began painting paintings of my own family, my mother, my brothers, and their children. I never had any children of my own. I never did marry. I guess you could say that I was more in love with my art than I was with any man. And of course, I was best friends with Edgar Degas. And he also was more in love with his art than any woman. He once said, there's love and there's creative work, and a man only has one heart. You can know where Edgar Degas' heart was going. I enjoyed him so much. He was a big influence in my life, but that man could infuriate me. Once we were at a party, and I remember the hostess unwisely said to him, Monsieur Degas, why do you paint women so ugly? Because, he responded, women in general are ugly. Can you believe such a comment? Once he said something bad about one of my friends, and I did not talk to him for a single month. That happened often, but then we'd always make up and we'd always go back to being friends. He even gave me the gift of a little dog once. I named it Batty. I have painted this little dog in many of my paintings. I found that I began painting things now with Japanese woodblock prints. I purchased about 24 of those. I like them so much. You would find them in one of my paintings called Mother Bathing Children, bathing a child. And I can say that I exhibited that too in one of the exhibitions. I can tell you that I began to buy some of my friends' paintings like Degas and Monet. I now came to like Monet. And I encouraged my brother and my good friend Louisa Havemeyer to purchase some of the Impressionist paintings. She loved Degas' paintings so much, she owned 65 of them. She had a few extra nickels in her pocket. So she actually purchased one of the last paintings in 1912, Dancers Practicing at the Bar. It sold for 500,000 francs, or in American money, $98,000. It was the largest money ever given to a living artist, and Monet, he was over the moon. He liked one of my paintings called Girl Arranging Her Hair, and he said it had style. And I liked this painting that he painted of me. We traded paintings once. He painted a painting of me when I was looking at the paintings at the Louvre. I continued to paint women and children. I painted a painting of my mother reading a book to our grandchildren. This was actually exhibited in the 6th Impressionist exhibition. I like to title my paintings. Another painting that I painted was Mother Hugging Child, and that is what Degas said was my best painting. And another painting I exhibited in the 8th, or the final Impressionist exhibition in 1886, was Children Playing on the Beach. I love this painting of 2 children that just have no cares in the world. In this final exhibition, 2 new artists were showing their work. One was named Seurat, and the other was Gauguin. It was Seurat's painting that was the talk of the show. He painted his painting entirely in tiny little dots. Can you imagine what the reviewers had to say about that? It was called pointillism. Of course, I believe that people should be able to experiment and do what they love to do, no matter what anyone else says about it. I had the great opportunity in 1893 to make a mural for the World's Exhibition in 1893, the World's Fair in Chicago. Bertha Palmer actually commissioned me to do it. And my friend Degas said I should not take on this assignment, for it would take away from my other work and it was just a decoration. I believe that I was a part of showing what wonderful achievement women have achieved in the 20th century. And I felt like it was the 19th century, I felt like I needed to be a part of it. It was called The Modern Woman. And I made a mural that was 12 feet wide by 58 feet long that was exhibited over the doorway of the Women's Fine Arts Building. And I loved painting it, and I did it in 3 sections. The middle part was called Women Plucking Fruits of Knowledge. Bertha Palmer sent me a nice letter saying that it was the most beautiful thing that was done for the Women's Building, and she predicted it to be a wonderful success. As much as I loved what I had done, there were others that criticized my work. They did not like how I used shocking apple, green, pink, and purple, and gold. There were some other people that said my mural was a failure. I never like to think of myself as a failure. I like to think of myself of ever-changing and growing. I believe we must take risks. If we are going to grow into what we have to be most passionate about, and we cannot fear failure, for it is oftentimes when things do not work out the way that we planned, we grow the most. I don't know what I would have ever done in my life as an artist if fate had not brought me to meet Edgar Degas. I value his critique and his praise more than anybody else. Sadly, my good friend died in 1917, and we buried him on a very sunny day. Just a small group of us were there to pay our respects and honor to this wonderful, wonderful artist. But sadly, after his died, his family sold all of his paintings, for they did not appreciate his work. And one of the paintings that was sold was my painting that he and I had exchanged, Girl Arranging Her Hair. Thankfully, my friend Louisa Havemeyer, she purchased that, so we still have that. But I will always, always know what the finest artist he was. I am so honored that my brothers, they appreciate my paintings. They have purchased a number of my paintings and other Impressionist painters and have loaned them to museums here in America. And I am very glad to see now that some of the museums are now showing the Impressionist painters when they never had done it before. And I'm so honored that there are people now buying my paintings. I sold another one of my paintings for $200, and now Bertha Palmer bought one of my paintings called Mother's Goodnight Kiss. She comes from a husband who was a tycoon, real estate tycoon, that built the Palmer House in Chicago for a wedding present. Sadly, that burnt in the Chicago fire, but he built another one even bigger and better. She went to Europe to try to purchase for her own art collection some of these new Impressionists. I told her to buy some of Degas' paintings. She now owns 29 Degas and 11 Renoirs, which that is such a wonderful collection. I returned back to America in Philadelphia in 1898 to go to the academy where I had started out, my dream of being an artist. And I was awarded a prize for my contribution to art here in America. It's one of the few awards that I have accepted because I have remembered what it felt like to be judged and rejected. I am so pleased that my paintings are now in the Boston Art Museum. I have now been commissioned to paint portraits of people who have come to me, which comes very easily to me, for I was doing that for so many years of my own family and my brothers and their children. I had one woman commission me to paint her painting, and I painted it exactly like she looked. It was perfect. When I gave it to her, she did not like the way she looked. If I can hold this big book up. There it is. It's an exact likeness of her. She would not pay me because she didn't like the way she looked. And I was very, very upset, and I just hid it in my closet for a lot of years. Then recently I took it out and I thought, I think it's pretty darn good. So I donated to the New York Metropolitan Art Museum, and they love it. I find that artwork is beauty in the eyes of the beholder, right? In 1904, 4 of my paintings were on exhibit at the Chicago Art Institute, including one of my paintings called Caress. I was so honored when they were going to give me a $500 prize for this painting. But again, I could not accept that because of my belief I told you about. Instead, I told the Art Institute to give this money to an art student who has dreams of one day being an artist, and that will help them. What I was most honored about, though, is that somebody from the Chicago newspapers wrote a beautiful review of my paintings, my 4 paintings. This is the Chicago Inter-Ocean. Mary Cassatt, who someone has styled the painter of the modern Madonna, offers 4 honest, everyday home scenes. Her children are not fairies or urchins or even angels. They are simple, wholesome, unspoiled youngsters. I thought this person said exactly what I knew to be true in my heart. I have to say, the greatest thing is that my father lived to see me become a professional artist. And he is very proud of the work that I have done and the hard work that I have put into arriving where I am in my career. He wrote this letter to my brother. My brother gave it to me. I have sent you a number of newspaper, art journals, etc., containing notices of Mary. Her success has been more and more emphasized since I wrote, and she begins to tire of it. I don't think I ever tired of it, but he said I tired of it. The Artist for May contains an extremely flattering notice of her. We hear almost daily of her in other French and English papers which have escaped our notice. In short, everybody says now that in the future, it won't matter what the papers say about her. She is now known to the art world as well as to the general public in such a way not to be forgotten again as long as she continues to paint. I'm sad to say that by the year 1914, I gave up painting. For you see, you'll see some of my last paintings I couldn't see. I had cataracts so bad, I tried surgery, and my eyesight is actually failing me. But I have to say that I have other passions right now. I have a beautiful chateau in France that I purchased with my earnings, and I have 1,000 rose bushes that I love to be in the garden. And I'm very, very passionate in this year of 1918 to try to get women the right to vote here in America. How many of you feel that women should be allowed to win the right vote to vote? Well, I'm glad, and maybe you could come to our gallery and see our work and purchase some of my paintings and Edgar Degas' painting to earn money to help women earn the right to vote in America. It has been my greatest honor to have my paintings alongside my best friend, Edgar Degas, whom I believe to be the greatest master artist in our 20th century. I have to say that in 1901, I went to Spain and I found El Greco's Assumption that was painted in the 1500s, and it was on sale for $40,000, which is a lot of money, but I tried to see which museum would love to purchase this to add to their collection. I'm proud to say that Chicago Art Institute added the Assumption to their collection. It is my hope that paintings like this could find their way into our national environment, into our museums. It was so lacking when I was just that 16-year-old student going to the academy. There were so few available here in America. I've tried to encourage my brother, who is the president of Pennsylvania Railroad, who also has a few extra nickels in his pocket. So I've encouraged him to buy some of the Impressionist painters. He has 4 Monets, he has 2 Renoirs, and he has a Pissarro. And he did buy Degas the ballet class. As I said, it is my hope that paintings from these wealthy Americans can find their way into our museums to enrich our nation and our national taste. I remember what it was like when I first exhibited with the Impressionists, that people laughed at our paintings because they didn't understand our work. And I am so proud and honored that now I am seeing the fruits of our labor, that museums now here in America are finally putting on the walls the paintings of the painters that I grew to love and who I was inspired by. I hope that these paintings you will come to admire, and that you will be able to do what you love to do more than anything else in the world, and that you can live your dream as I have been given opportunity to live my dream. Thank you so much for sharing with me my story. Thank you.